So while we're on the subject of styling, let's talk about styling in a little more detail. First off, whenever you're designing a web page, it's always best practice to break the whole page down as much as you can into individual sections so that you can actually apply different styles to different parts of your web page itself. So if you notice, we created a div section called main title, and inside there we put our "this is my master page" into line breaks. Let's say that we wanted to style this whole main content placeholder as well. What we would do is, again, we would just create a div id equals main content style, close our tag, and then take the closing tag and drop it just on the other side of the content placeholder. What this would do is, in the main title we could have whatever styling we wanted for this section, and in the main content style we could have an entirely different style for this whole section. Now, to make code a little bit easier to read, what we're going to do is kind of break it up here a little bit. I'll just drop it down a line, and then Visual Studio, the editor, actually allows you to kind of line things up so you can see where your beginning tags are, your ending tags are, and then it kind of indents everything in there. So what the keystroke is for that is hold Control key, and then push KD. So hold Control KD, and you'll see that it kind of indents everything and makes everything a little more readable. So our first div is right here. It's our main title div, and our second div is right here, which is our main content style. We can add a third div down here, div id equals secondary content, closing tag, and we can put additional content inside here. This is my secondary content. Okay, so it just kind of keeps everything nice and organized for us. Now, as far as styling, in our default.css, we already have a main title section, but we don't have the main content style or the secondary content. Okay, let me take the spaces out of here. So what we can do is we can create these two sections the same way that we created our main title. So we go up here to our default.css, and we do pound main content style, our opening and closing brackets, and then drop down here for secondary content and our opening and closing brackets. So what we've done is we've created two additional sections, secondary content, main content style, in our default.css. So let's say our main content style, we want the color to be red. Now, there's two different ways that you can declare your colors. You can do the name of the color, or you can do what's called the hexadecimal representation, or the hexadecimal number for that particular color. There's 100 different ways that you can get the hexadecimal number for any particular color. My favorite is opening up Photoshop, and if you've ever used Photoshop or any image editing program where you can select individual colors, they usually give you the hexadecimal number for that particular color. I happen to know a couple right off the top of my head, so I'm going to do red, which is the # FF0000 and my semicolon. So that is an actual hexadecimal number for the color red. And the secondary content will do blue, so color and then 0000 FF, and that's blue. So, and again, you can get these from any image editing software that actually displays the hexadecimal numbers for any particular color. So if we go ahead and save that, now we go back into our main master page. Anything that's inside our main content style, or our main content div, okay, which just so happens to be our content placeholder for our secondary pages, that is going to be printed out in red. Okay. In the secondary content, which is this is my secondary content, that's going to be printed out in blue. So if we run this, we can actually see what it looks like. You can see this is my masters in green, this is my home pages in red, this is my secondary content is in blue. And if we go to our page 2, you see the same thing. Green, red, and blue. This is very useful and very helpful when you're going through and styling your website to break it down into as many different sections as you possibly can. Now what's nice about it is not only can you use IDs, but you can also use what's called a class. So if we change this to, instead of ID, to class secondary content, and then go back into our default.css, and instead of a pound sign we put a period, that creates a class called secondary content. Now the main difference between IDs and classes, IDs can only be used in one place on your entire web page. Classes can be used in multiple places. So we have, this is my secondary content. Let's create another div, and we'll assign it the class equals. Now once you actually create the class and you save your default.css file, you'll see once you do div class equals and then the quotation marks, you'll see secondary content comes up right here. So we can just click on that, double click on it, and it automatically puts it in. We do our closing quotation marks and our closing div tag. This is the final secondary content. Okay, so now we have, this is my master page, we have our content placeholder for the content that we put on our secondary pages, and we have two divs, both with the same class, one with this is my secondary content and the other one, this is my final secondary content, and they both use the secondary content class that we set up in our CSS file. So when we run this, we now have, this is my master page, this is my home page in red, and this is my secondary content and my final secondary content, both in blue. So using classes allows you to use the same style on multiple sections of the web page or the website. So let's add something else to default.css. Under secondary content, we are going to add another property called font weight. So font dash weight, and we're going to select bold. And now when we run it, we can now see that our text in our master page and our home page is regular font style, normal font style, and our everything that's in our secondary content is bold and blue. Okay, so those are just some different things that we can do, different styles that we can apply to our individual div tags. The second thing that we can do is we can do the height and the weight, or height and the width. So what I'll do is I'll just do height, and let's say that we want to do 50 pixels. Now pixels are the individual dots that are on your monitor or on your screen. So we're actually creating a secondary content. The div section is going to be 50 pixels in height, and we'll do width equals 300 pixels. Okay, so we're going to have a block of content that is 300 pixels wide by 50 pixels high. And when we run it, we'll see that it now puts spaces in here. Okay, so this content section right here is actually in a section of the page that is 50 pixels high by 300 pixels wide. Now we can't really see this unless we actually have borders around it, so we'll do one more thing, we'll add a border. So border, and if you look at what pops up under here, we can set a width, a style, and a color. So the width will do 2 pixels, put a space in there. The style will just do solid, and the color will do black. So the hexadecimal number for black is 6 zeros, 1 2 3 4 5 6. Put our semicolon, we'll run it, and now we can actually see the width and the height of our div section. So from left to right it's 300 pixels wide, top to bottom is 50 pixels, and that goes for each secondary section, or each section of secondary content.